Welcome back to the Battletech guide video with Mildred. And we're on to I would say the most exciting part of the game, one would think, the shooting phase. So I have replicated a awesome 80-ton battle mech and a 90-ton Highlander to be our demonstration here. For the purposes of this demonstration, neither has suffered damage yet. They are 100% available, and let's just say that they weren't in any kind of heat penalty zone before this started. We'll talk about how that would possibly change things. But let's say that they were at 0 heat before this. Maybe they weren't able to fire at anything last turn. So both have declared a firing on each other. And you might be asking, what are these dice here for? So the more you move, the more hexes you move, the harder you are to hit. You come up with what I term as evasion. The book only says plus whatever to hit, which is a little bit lame. The evasion, I think, gets things more across, that we are doing something. We're putting a word to it. We're putting a term to it. So they want to fire at each other. Our first step is going to be to measure the distance. Now, you'll notice coming up with centimeters, you can set it to inches. There is no way to set it to hexes, which is annoying, so you're stuck counting the hexes. Now, I already have, and using my method of counting, we're 6 hexes apart. You can use different methods if you want. I take a method that allows it to allow the most damaging shooting possible, because nobody enjoys a game in which you're trading blows and it's all just missing. So there's one other thing I'm going to add here that I didn't think to add, which is I'm going to grab a torso twist marker. So at the end of your movement phase, and when you declare a shot, you can torso twist towards an enemy. So I haven't really talked about firing arcs. We're going to talk about firing arcs here in a second. Actually, we'll talk about it now. So firing arcs, you can have this handy little field of fire tool here, which is, if you center it on the mech, you can see whether you're shooting front, left, right, or rear. Most mechs cannot shoot their rear arc, and the left and right arc lead to certain weapons not being able to take part. In this case, both are forward arc firing, and as a result, actually probably don't even need the torso twist. Don't actually, but we'll do it anyways, just to exemplify it. This allows both mechs to fire all of their guns. Okay, so we know the distance apart is 6. So let's have a look at the Awesome. The small laser on the Awesome is too far away to do any damage. It has a max range of 3. It cannot shoot beyond that. But its 3 PPCs are all at short range. This is going to be very, very important. I'm going to explain it in a bit. Now, if he fires all of his weapons, except for the small laser, he's going to generate 30 heat. He can only bleed off 28. Additionally, in our example, he's walked, which means he's creating an additional 1 heat for the walking. And grab a little heat scale marker here. So that means that he is... Now, you would do this after the firing for the record, but I'm just doing it now so you can see what the mental calculation would be. So he's generated 31 heat and can only break off 28 of it. So he moves up to 3. Now, we notice he's okay. 3 heat is not a problem. His movement is not impaired. The function of his mech is not impaired. He's fine. Now, what's the Highlander going to do? See, the Highlander has a lot of firepower. You can see it actually has a fairly comparable nice amount of firepower. It's got 20 damage from the autocannon. It's got 20 damage from the LRMs. That's 40 damage right there. It can do 12 more damage with the SRMs and 10 more damage with the lasers. It actually can do more damage than this Awesome can. However, number 1, 2 of his weapons are scattering. And number 2, only the LRMs are at close range. This is beautiful for the Awesome. This is the ideal engagement range for it, because the weapons on the Highlander are not functioning the best they can. He can still alpha strike, though, and we're going to let him do that and generate 23 heat. He also jumped. That's what that blue dice means. So he's generated 26 heat. So he's actually in big trouble here because he only has 13 heat sinks. This means he's already way up to 10 heat. But he's desperate. He needs to make that awesome go away. And it's only to -2 movement points and a +1 to fire modifier next turn. It's not too bad, but it is definitely a sign of desperation. Actually, he generated 3 more heat. So actually, he'd be on the next one. -2 modifier. I think he'd still risk it. This Mac, for the record, should never really alpha strike, but in this case, we're doing it. All right. So now what we have to do is calculate the difficulty to hit. So we again turn ourselves to the handy little weapon attacker here. So we have to look at the attacker first. Do we have any sensor damage? No. We have no shoulder damage. We have no upper or lower actuator damage. Nope. And we have no heat penalty. So nothing yet. We're at short range, so there's no penalty. And we're not dealing with any secondary targeting stuff. So from this, we ascertain that we have a 4 to hit. The 4 is just our ballistic skill. There's no adjustment otherwise. But you'd be wrong, because we did walk. So that brings us up to a 5. Because it's harder to shoot when you've moved. There's an advantage to staying still if you can. The target is also in light woods. That's a 6. Finally, the target has 1 evasion, which puts us at a 7 to hit. So, and also he jumped. Well, actually, that would be on the evasion, actually. Well, okay, we'll do that. So it's 8. He jumped, and he has light woods and 1 evasion, and we walked, plus the 4 base. So we're hitting on 8s. So we're going to grab 2 dice and roll them here on the awesome. So shot 1 missed, shot 2 missed, shot 3 missed. Let's say that shot 3 hit, because I need something to actually demo here. I can't have all misses. So let's say that this is a 5. Okay. So we got an 8. That's a hit. So with a PPC, you do 10 direct energy damage to the Highlander. Now, that's just not 10 damage anywhere. We now are going to roll on a mech hit location table again here. So we're shooting from the front. So we use this middle column here, which is the front and rear column. There's a different one for the right and left side. And we're going to roll. So we hit 4. That is the right arm of the Highlander. So we're going to mark down 10 damage to the right arm of the Highlander. So here's the right arm. It's not going to do much because we're hitting an undamaged assault mech. And as much as you'd like to, you're probably not going to kill an assault mech on the first try. That's just how that works. So here we go. Now the Highlander gets its chance to retaliate. So the Highlander is firing everything at 6. It jumped, which is 3. And there's no other, and there's 1 evasion. So we're talking a base to hit of 8, and then a range modifier might bring it to 10. You can see instantly that, like, it was hard to hit on an 8. Imagine hitting on a 10 now. However, he does have the LRMs, his LRM 20, which is hitting at medium range, which means it's hitting on an 8s to hit, much like the PPCs from the awesome. So, if we roll, this is a potential 20 damage. That's a 6. Let's say it's a hit because I want to demonstrate a missile hit. So, boom! Suddenly, whoa! We got a 9 hit. Woo! Big hit. All right. There's this cluster table here. Missiles have to roll on the cluster table to determine how many missiles actually hit. Because you fired 20 missiles at the enemy. There's a reason that it says 1 damage per missile on the weapon platform. So let's roll here. We're just firing a 20 missile pack, which is here. Then we rolled an 8. This means 12 missiles actually hit. Now, for missiles, we group them into groups of 5 when we can. And then the leftovers would be in another group. So we have 5 damage, 2 damage. And we're rolling on the hit location to determine where that damage is. So we had a 7, that's center torso for 5 damage. That's a critical hit center torso for 10 damage. So we're going to talk about a critical hit. And 2 critical. Oh my god. I need the dice rolling in my next game. Oh my lord. That was the best dice rolling ever. After having terrible. So we did all 12 damage to the center torso. That is literally amazing. I've never seen that. I've seriously never seen that. I'm geeking out while explaining the game. That's fun. So, what are critical hits, you ask? So, critical hits happen naturally if you start damaging the structure of the opponent's mech. But since we twice rolled snake eyes, we get critical hits on the center torso. It's amazing. Because you can see the critical there. All right. So, there's a critical hit table here. If we roll 2 to 7, nothing special happens. But if we roll 8 or above, things will start happening. So let's roll. That's an 11 and an 8. Ooh, okay. So, for the 11, we're going to roll 2 crit hit locations, and for the 8, we're going to roll 1. So we're rolling 3 crit hits here on the awesome. This might actually kill. This could theoretically kill an assault mech right after I said, on the first shot, you're totally not going to kill an assault mech. I might be wrong. I might be entirely wrong. Okay. So, when you're doing crit hits on a torso, you can see the legs, it's pretty simple. You just roll d6, and whatever you roll takes a hit. But on the torso and the arms, they're divided into 2 parts, which means that you're able to... you have to roll 2 dice. So we're going to roll this dice here for the locations. So 2, 1, and 2. So everything is up here because that's the 1 to 3. So we're going to roll 3 here. So 3, a 3, and my lord, it's slightly broken. So that would have been 3 engine hits. So bang, bang, bang. This mech is crippled. It has no engine. It can't move. And its pilot is in really problematic shape because if you take that many hits on the engine... Well, actually, I'm pretty sure the mech is actually dead. I have to look this up. I know that if you destroy a center torso entirely... you will destroy a mech. But there's a possibility that the engine destruction will do it as well. So here I am saying you can't kill an assault mech on the first shooting phase, and that LRM-20 just made a complete liar out of me. Like if I were the owner of the Awesome, I would literally just resign from the game. Like, the dice hate me. The dice are being completely assholish to me right now. Like, what can I do? What am I supposed to do with this? Oh my god. So nasty. Let's see. Is the mech officially dead? Hang on. Engine crit hits. There they are. Okay. Battle mech engines have 3 points of shielding. Each critical hit to the engine destroys one point of shielding. As the points of shielding are destroyed, the amount of heat escaping the fusion drive increases. The first hit 5, then 10. The critical hit shuts down the engine, puts the battle mech out of commission for the rest of the game. It killed the Awesome! And the range favored the Awesome. I have never seen that. Oh my god. There would be no point in continuing to shoot. But basically, we have been hitting on 10s with the medium laser, autocannon, and SRM. And there's nothing really special, so I'm not going to bother rolling it. But we just saw the greatest shooting of all time from that Highlander pilot, and he needs to take a massive bow. An absolutely massive bow. So what else is important with the shoot? Well, the other thing we would do is we would mark ammo. So he used up an LRM shot. This is how many salvos the weapon can hit, not how many missiles it carries. It doesn't carry 12 missiles. It carries, it'd be 240, 20 times 12. And you would then mark off the ammo usage here as well. Now, a tip. You want to mark off the ammo usage as quickly as you can, because if you get a critical hit and it explodes the ammo, 1, you lose that ammo. But 2, the mech is taking an immense amount of damage, equal to the amount of ammo exploding. So let's say that this mech is a bit of a bad example because it's going to require some math. But let's say we used up all the LRM ammo. Let's say it's gone. And this left torso got hit, and you crit hit this this SRM here. Your mech would take 30 points of damage because each missile is worth 2 damage, and your mech is messed up. So let's simulate that for a moment. So we would use the mech damage location table, and again we group them into groups of 5. So we have 10 damage, or we have 10 damage. How many missiles was it again? I can't believe I forgot. But we'll check this out. So we have 15 there. So yeah, 3 groups. So it's gonna be 10 damage, 10 damage, 10 damage. So we would then roll here, and we would take 10 damage to the center torso. We would take 10 damage to the left arm, and we would take 10 damage to the left torso. So the left side of this mech would be significantly messed up in that case. Let's talk about damage transference. So what happens when you run out of damage in a part? Well, number 1, that part gets blown up. But number 2, you start to transfer the damage. So if, say, we blew off the left arm of this awesome, but we had damage left over, it would go to the left torso, and then to the center torso, and then to the right torso, and then to the right arm. Although actually, if the center torso is gone, then the mech is dead. So that's a bad example. So it'd be left arm. If left arm takes damage, but there's no left arm, then it's left torso, then it's center torso. And it moves in like that. And the legs move up into the side torsos as well. The head doesn't transfer at all, because if you kill the head, you kill the mech. So the ways to kill the mech are the head, the center torso, the engine, and there are other ways that you can basically cripple it. Like if you blow off both legs, the mech may not be, air quotes, dead, but the mech is not in great shape. We'll leave it at that. So we talked about the heat cycles here. There are various penalties here. So obviously, let's say that we brought the heat up to 14. That means that there would be a potential shutdown, and you need to roll a 4+ to avoid it. So not too bad, but you want to keep the heat scale under control. And that's why the mechs won't just blatantly alpha strike every turn, because you'll quickly cook the pilot and the internal components. So balancing the heat is quite important. The only other thing to really talk about in the shooting phase is we'll talk about indirect fire and partial cover and secondary fire. So partial cover. Let's say that we were exchanging fire sort of like this. We have this one level wall in the way. This would be partial cover. Partial cover, the rulebook disagrees with itself on this one, in that some places it says +3, some places it says +1. So before the game, just decide that with you and your opponent. What are you guys comfortable with? And that increases the difficulty to hit. It also means that the legs are taking no damage. So instead of rolling on this chart here for mech hit location, you would roll on the punch location table and just roll 1d6, because it's the upper body that can take hits. So simultaneously, it's harder to hit a partially covered mech, but with their legs not taking any damage, you can usually get more critical things done if you do hit them. So it's a bit of a blessing and a curse. Let's talk about indirect fire. So LRMs can do what is called indirect fire. So if you notice here, if we have a situation like this, this Highlander cannot see the awesome and vice versa. But let's say the Highlander has a friendly buddy. Where's... I don't have my Griffin? I deleted my Griffin. That was foolish. It could be another mech to work with. Oh, no, here he is. Let's say the Griffin's here. The Griffin can spot the awesome for the Highlander, and the Highlander can shoot, despite not having line of sight. That being said, he's at a +1 to hit, and only LRMs can do indirect fire, because they shoot up and arch towards the enemy. The auto cannon on the arm of this Highlander, for example, which is there an auto cannon on this one? I have not looked at this model close. I think this is the laser variant model, so no. So these lasers here, for example, would just be shooting this wall, and obviously can't hit the awesome. And same with this. But the difficulty is increased. Secondary targeting is much the same. A mech can shoot 2 targets in its front arc, but it has to declare a primary one where it's like focusing its attention on, and the secondary one is at +1 to hit. So again, it's just a less likely chance of actually hitting, but it can hit, and it definitely has situational value. Finally, we're going to talk about a knockdown or immobile mech. Prone mechs are actually harder to hit because they present a smaller target and they are still moving. But if they are immobilized, you can do what is called an aimed shot. An aimed shot gives you the option to specify, I want to hit his head, his center torso, his left torso, whatever is appropriate for the given time. There's a dice roll involved. If you have to roll a 6, 7, or an 8 for it to work. And if it fails, you're just scattering the shot normally. But that's a way to possibly kind of snipe out targets to hit specific parts of the mech. And that's pretty much all there is to talk about with shooting. We talked about the ammo destruction. We've talked about killing a mech. We've talked about the ranges of hitting. And we've talked about the sort of weaknesses and strengths of individual weapons. So I think, honestly, the shooting phase is actually not that complicated. You'll see complicated when we get into the physical phase. Because that is honestly where things get kind of complex. So stay tuned for that.